after a few months, couple months of this and saying, thank you so much, because our daughter would anytime we wanted to talk about emotions or how she was feeling, she would just like clamp up and not and shut down. And now she has the language, and we've been drawing the spots, and we've been talking about, because I did a whole series on the emotion spots. Um, and that was really like, I'm like, okay, if I reached one child and gave them permission, vocabulary, whatever they needed to be able for their parents to be like, thank you, because, that it just meant so much to me.
It's those little things that keep me finding my way back to the Orange County line.
Welcome to the Y with Dr. T, and I am here with one of my really special friends, Kara Schmidt, and we're going to talk all things teen peace. We're going to talk a little bit of neuroscience. We're going to talk about all the cool things that teen peace has to offer Orange County. So welcome, Kara.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Yay! So glad.
I know. We've been talking about this for a while.
I know. And I really value us. We get together ever so often and sit way too long at the restaurant.
Hey.
And talk about all things cool about Orange County.
Yeah. And lots of other stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what teen peace is. So if you need to kind of rewind a little,
well, how much not? Like, do you want me to tell you where it started?
Yeah, because when I became involved with you and with Teen Peace, it wasn't called Teen Peace. We made that kind of that transitional move. So I guess maybe back up to what are you trained in? Like how did you getting into this type of neuroscience-based, I don't even know, education really. I used to just call it mindfulness and resilience, but it's way more than that. So
okay.
Where should we start?
I mean, I could go back a long ways, but I will say my interest in trauma and trauma-informed practices started when I lived in Chicago. So that was over 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I started learning more about the brain and the nervous system and how trauma impacts the brain and nervous system. And I started to look at my own nervous system and things that I didn't realize were impacting me, like trauma, actually, like things from my childhood that I thought I shouldn't consider a big deal were actually showing up as complex trauma. And I started to do that investigation myself back in like 2012, 2013. And then when we moved to Paoli in 2015, so I'm from here, but moved back after being gone over 20 years. And it took us a little while to start to kind of like figure out what we wanted to do. We're still trying to figure it out in some ways, but I knew that growing up in this community, I wanted to do something to give back. And, it's like, how do you match or marry your skills and experiences and strengths and the things you're interested in with a new community, and in a community that you feel passionate about because of the ties here. That's how I felt, and that opportunity to kind of bring together some of my past experiences. So I was a yoga teacher for many years, and in yoga, I taught mindfulness. And in that, all of that realm, I did a lot of like my own healing and just self-awareness and understanding parts of myself and just growth and that sort of stuff. So, so like wellness and well-being and mental health as part of that has always been kind of an interest, right?
Well, so going back before the toxic stress that kind of can lead into trauma or adverse childhood experiences, those types of things. But going back to that, how I don't think I ever asked you, how did you get into learning yoga and the that
Yeah.
how,
Well, because of mental health struggles. So, when I was 19, my first year of college, 18, I found myself crying all the time at, you know, what seemed like nothing, and calling home. And like at first, we thought it was just homesickness, but then
Hmm.
I started seeing a therapist in college, and she, by my second session, was like, "This is more than just being homesick. This is clinical depression."
Mhm.
So that like opened my eyes to things that I hadn't ever really considered.
Yeah.
Right. So I did, do therapy. I went on antidepressants, but then as I continued that journey with just like anxiety and depression, I was like, what else can I do to support my system? Right. So I started looking at more kind of alternative sorts of ways to support
Mm.
myself besides therapy. And not that those things weren't helpful or weren't working, but I was just that kind of person who wanted to
What
like,
else?
yeah,
Right,
what
like,
else?
what else?
And what can I do
Right.
for myself? And I didn't necessarily want to be on medication if I didn't have to. So I wondered, it was like a cure, kind of an experiment. Like, if I find something else that supports me, will I still need medication or won't I? And it turns out I didn't need medication. Not that that's the case for everybody. Um, but I found yoga, and it was like, I remember my first class. So this was in 1996 or early 1997. And I remember driving the 20 minutes home from my first class and feeling, probably wasn't the first time in my life, but the first time that I could remember like feeling at peace and like a sense of settledness and okayness. And I was like, whoa, you know? And it lasted for more than just an evening, it lasted for days. And
Yeah.
so I started practicing at home because I wanted to feel that more, right? And that started me on a journey that, like, I mean, I was pretty strongly into yoga for over 15 years
Yeah.
from that point on. So I got certified to teach and opened my work.
And this was all still while you were in
Goshen.
at the
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Yep. So we lived in northern Indiana. That's where I went to college and met Andy, my husband, and we lived there for quite a while before we moved to Chicago. And then we came here.
And that was in 2015.
15. Yes, we've been
And
here
you bought
10
the
years.
tomato factory.
Yes, we bought the old tomato factory.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is pretty amazing. It's just a phenomenal building and spot.
We love it, and it's going to need we say it'll never be finished. It's kind of a lifelong thing. Not that it won't be finished enough to, use it for different purposes that we're exploring still. But yeah, we love it.
Yeah. Okay. So when you said 2015, I thought, because I could not remember when you and I, what year, how long has it been?
How do
And
you remember?
well,
Sure,
okay,
yes.
so here's my here. So let me think about this. So I worked at Southern Hills Counseling,
Okay.
and I started work there in 2000. So I have to have some dates to get my timelines right. But I started there in 2000 as a case manager,
Uh-huh.
and then I went back to school in 2002 to get my master's. So it had to have been sometime around 2004-ish, I think. Well, in 2000 up until 2002, 2004, I worked with Ted Larison
Uh-huh.
and Sally Leinbach.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, I worked just in community, like with Dr. Yoder, but I worked at Southern Hills with Ted and Sally. And um, both of them really encouraged me to attend Paoli Mennonite Fellowship. And I'm sure it probably took a little while before I gave that a try, but the kids were young. I think when we finally started to go there, I think that, Christian was still in diapers. So that had to have been in like 2009, 2010, maybe. So it predated you coming back home, but your mom attends PMF.
Yeah.
And so I actually had met Sherry first.
Okay.
So I couldn't probably tell you any like real stories because I can't remember, but everybody knew everybody had kids, and a lot of the PMF folks there, their adult kids had moved away. There wasn't, I don't think, a ton that was actually still home in Orange County. So when they talked about them, they were these elusive people, right? Somewhere out there are these people, these offspring. And so I think that, during those years, I had probably heard more about you than I actually kind of knew.
Yeah.
But then I think when you came back, you started to attend somewhat.
I did
off and on.
off and on.
Off and on.
Yeah.
But that I don't think is when we started to have a relationship.
No, I don't think I ever went when you were there. If I did, I wasn't aware.
I don't know.
Yeah. But what I remember, I heard your name, and I think it was, so I worked at Lost River Market for a little while, and we were having some staff conflict or like struggles with communication or personality kind of difference.
And don't we all?
Yeah. And my upbringing from Paley Mennonite, and I went to a Mennonite college, and, there's a lot of focus on, I didn't study peace and conflict, but there's a heavy kind of emphasis
Yes.
on that in what I grew up in. And so I'm like, how can we like address this? Maybe we need to bring in a third party, somebody to kind of help us talk through some of these things. And so I remember mentioning it to Debbie Turner, and she was like, yeah, sure, And so I called you. Somebody said, oh, yeah, Randy Terrell. I think that was when you had your own, like you were off on your own.
So it would have been 17 or 18.
Yeah, 17, I think. I think it was 17.
That would have been 17 or 18.
Yeah. And I called you and we played phone tag, but we never connected. And then nothing, like we didn't.
Yeah.
I think it was more my fault. So I don't think I followed up. I know, I'm pretty sure. Think I got busy with other things, and maybe things resolved or we figured some things out. But anyway, like it wasn't something that was so intense that like, it must have been like we figured something.
I don't know if I
But
ever,
anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Because we didn't end up ever having a session, but that's why I called you. And then I remember you being it was either an Orange County Health Coalition. Remember when we used to have that?
Yeah, I do.
And then, or an early Thrive, or maybe it was when we were meeting at the Royan House for the Thrive that you were at one of those. And I was like, oh, Brandy Terrell. And I put a face to a name. So, so it was in that, right in those.
Well, that would have been around 19.
Yeah.
Because I think when Thrive Orange County, or SICHC's Thrive Orange County Initiative, because Thrive is not its own thing. It is under the clinic. That really, into 18-ish, into 19 was kind of when that that whole organic thing
Mhm.
kind of exploded, and you were a part of that, and that's what and that too is what I remember, but it feels like we've always been there hasn't been a time I feel like there's not been a time.
I know, right?
It's
Well,
weird.
part of that is that, I mean, you were at a different school than I was, but we basically grew up at the same time
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
area. And
yeah,
so I'm sure at basketball games, football games, whatever, like we were passing each other, right? Or
yeah,
like
something.
whatever. I mean, even if we didn't recognize or know by like face or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Um,
Wow.
yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, because I do think that maybe probably that was more of an interaction with your mom
Hmm.
than anything
Yeah.
else, but, through the years.
And I would come back to visit, so
Yeah, and
church.
then that all kind of progressed into so it was, So in Body that
Yeah.
it
So
right?
when we moved here, of course, I was still, I mean, in Chicago, yoga was what I did. I taught 18 classes a week all over the city. I helped to manage studios. I had previous to that in Goshen, I had started and owned my own yoga studio that was thriving. And when we moved to Chicago, I continued to own it for about a year, and then I sold it to one of the main teachers. Um, and so that was still pretty heavily my life and my interest when we moved here. So I started teaching yoga classes here right away.
Now there really wasn't anyone doing that here,
No,
right? I mean, it's
and that
probably
was when the Healing Arts Center
yes,
in the
it's
old
in the old
library,
library.
and my
Yeah,
mom started that. So I just kind of like joined into that group, and there was, massage and Zumba classes and PIO
yeah,
classes. There were all kinds of different things going on. It's really too bad that, kind of just for lots of different reasons, like
yeah.
kind of didn't fall apart, but just, some dissolved. But yeah, so I I taught regular yoga classes. I taught a yoga teacher training here, and certified teachers in this area. Um, and uh, that's when and then at that time, I named it So In Body, Southern Indiana Body, as my yoga practice and business.
Yeah, and that's
So,
that's what I remember because as we were meeting with Thrive Orange County, um, with those you were always a part of that,
yeah,
with,
yeah.
because
I was invited to the first
first
meeting.
yeah, and so the first meeting predates me because I didn't come on board until, oh goodness, sometime in 2019, when because Ramona Osborne was the first, chair, and I was working as a youth first social worker at the Orleans Elementary
Yeah,
School.
I remember that.
And we she had reached out as kind of the bridge with the school system.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I had met her. And of course, she was preaching my language like, I mean, that's right up my alley with adverse childhood experiences and those types of things. And also working in the school system, also being had so many years in mental health care, and here we are. But that's quickly kind of blossomed into some pretty cool stuff that you're doing now. And this is what I
Yeah.
really want to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's talk about kind of the transition from So in Body to now what is Team Peace, and then and how that kind of mission vision kind of it blossomed out and emerged into this very specific kind of neuroscience based education.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, I remember the moment I met Ramona Osborne. Dr. Yoder was at our place for we had a fundraiser for Lost River Market, and Ramona was there, and Dr. Yoder had taken some of my yoga programs, or like I also became a health coach while in those early years that I was
Mhm.
here, and I had a health coach group, and Dr. Yoder was part of that. And anyway, so she kind of knew some of my interests and skills and that sort of thing. And so she introduced me to Ramona. That was in like June of 2018. And then because also Doris Weaver was working at SICHC at the time. And because of my connection to her and Dr. Yoder through PMF, like I had talked about, how I wanted to work with young girls and girls empowerment, that sort of thing. And so um, they invited me to that first Thrive. It wasn't even called Thrive.
No,
That
it
first
wasn't.
group of people, it was,
Yeah.
just to talk about what
Yeah.
they were learning about trauma. Yeah. And what it could look like to be a trauma-informed community. And I was just like, I can't even believe this is happening. Like, this is so
I know.
right down my alley,
Yes.
right? Like, it brought together so many things that I was passionate about. And it also started to feel like it was potentially going to open doors for ways for me to offer not just my passion and interest, but like my skills and the experience that I was coming in with, right? So
So before you move on, that reminds me that so when I became involved with Thrive, Ramona had they had really just settled on a name because she had utilized, and I had never heard of this, like this was even possible. She had utilized somebody, probably it's something similar to what is that fervor what is it where there's all kinds of people who can do all kinds of creative things for you, like um nobody had websites then, but it was kind of like documents or PDFs or business cards or logos.
Yeah, I
But
remember that.
So I remember her working with this gentleman who was on a different time zone, somewhere else in the other side of the world. And his daytimes was our night times, and that she had commissioned him to create the Thrive logo. And the reasoning was because it was moving so fast that nobody had any information, and she had nothing to give people who were wanting to know, well, what are you talking about here? So no name, no logo. It was so grassroots. And I remember her talking about, I mean, it was fresh off the press, the Thrive logo that this gentleman from another part of the world helped to create with her. And she had to stay up really late in order to work with him multiple times. And you know what a perfectionist she was. So it took days.
Yeah. She's like,
days.
all nine.
Yes. And I remember her telling me that. And here we are now, fast forward with, I mean, and this is not about Thrive, but all the things associated, all the connections. But
it's a huge
piece of the puzzle, right?
Connecting.
Piece,
Yeah.
why this is important.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of these things that your piece here that we're going to get to is it's so much a part of the why. Like, why do we do these things? Why is it important for communities? So we stopped at, that's the beginning, but now I want to move into how did we get to Team Peace, and then what is Team Peace?
Yeah. So it was at one of those initial meetings that eventually turned into the Thrive OC Coalition, that I was sitting at a table with educators and law enforcement and people from the clinic, healthcare, all these.
Was that our strategic planning event? No, it was before that. Okay.
Before Thrive didn't have a name yet.
Oh, man.
Still didn't have
okay.
At this point.
Okay.
I don't even know. There might have been 10 of us. I remember the dining room table at Royal House. All fit around it.
We were still meeting there when I started.
Yeah.
Meeting there. Yeah.
And Laura Line, who's a first grade teacher at Troop Elementary here in Paoli, and Stephanie Carr, who at that time was the assistant principal at Troop, were there. And we just were going around the table introducing ourselves. And I, said who I was. And I said, I am a yoga teacher and da, da, da. And Loreline goes, you come into my classroom. It was like that. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, that would be amazing. And she said that the reason, this is what I remember. I hope I think she remembers it the same, but the reason she was really, really concerned about school shootings and just like, how do we prevent that? What little thing or big thing, what can an educator, a teacher in a classroom do to help be a part of preventing that? Like having kids feel so disconnected and alone and not seen that they turn to these extreme measures, right?
Yeah.
And and her brother is a state police officer, and he also was at some of those first meetings, Paul Andrew, and he said, I know one of the things he told her was like, you got to find more ways to like help kids connect in the classroom, help them feel like they belong, more of a family sort of feel in the classroom. And I don't know if he said this, but she had made this connection like, self-regulation, like kids being able to regulate emotions, talk about emotions, that sort of thing in kind of a just regular everyday sort of way, like in the classroom. And so she made this connection that things like yoga or mindfulness might be helpful in this. So we did a 6-week pilot. It was like, I think we did twice a week for 6 weeks just in her classroom. And there was yoga in that, because that's what I knew. Right. And we did
Right.
mindfulness practices. And I had taught kids camps back in Goshen. So, like,
Right.
I had explored and kind of played with some other sorts of things that are kind of outside of the yoga realm, more in the social emotional learning realm, although I didn't really know that's what it was called. Right.
Right.
But, like, you know, how do you name emotions? How do you know how emotions feel in your body? How do those become signs and signals for you to go, you know what? There's something going on. I need to either ask for help or talk to somebody or find a way to express it, right?
Right.
So anyway, so we did that pilot program.
And this was before the neuroscience was really catching up.
Yeah.
So
I knew
before
about some of the neuroscience, but
it wasn't.
it didn't occur to me to include it until
But even then, the neuroscience was not.
well, it
I
wasn't
mean, it wasn't as emergent as it is now. It's not as mainstream. As it is now.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
I did at that point know about the polyvagal theory, like, and how even before I knew about ACEs, I kind of knew that
Right.
whole story of trauma, and how it affects the nervous system and health. Anyway, so so that next year, Troop invited me back. They got grant funding. They said, "Can you do the whole first grade? And can you maybe like, can we look at," and I was interested in this too. It was both me and the school kind of collaborating together. Can we look at a program that isn't so yoga focused, but does include regulation tools, does include ways for kids to feel connected to each other, and does include, social emotional sorts of things. And um, so I did research, I did some training programs that summer, and came back and also over the summer, I went and asked Mr. Jimmy Ellis, who was the principal at Orleans Elementary at that time. I told him what we did at Troop, and he was very open, and I offered to do it on a volunteer basis, just as a pilot. So we did first grade, both.
And I was around for that.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
because the
yes.
the ACEs study
Yeah.
was either started or getting started at that time, because that was fall of 2019.
So it was so the ACEs study, Orleans and Springs Valley, they were in the, I can't remember if it was right kind of in the middle of that year. So I can't remember if it was 19 into I think it was 19 is when we right before Christmas break, somewhere around in there, we did the study on those two. And then Valley or Paoli did not come on board until the following fall, I think, in 2020. No, wait,
It was pre-COVID.
no, it was
Yeah.
no, it was January 2020 because we ended March 13th, 2020 is when the school shut down. Friday, I think, March 13th, I think. I'm pretty certain that's when that was. and was our last one. We had just wrapped everything up that January. So it was that right after the kids come back at Valley or at Paoli that we got those numbers. So if that's right, so I can't, if Mr. Ellis was still the elementary principal, had moved up to soup. I can't remember. It was right in that
Yeah.
that
I think
time.
he was still at the elementary.
I think he was still at the
At
elementary.
least the fall, like
Yeah.
2000.
I
the
think
end
he
of
was still at the
2002.
elementary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So we did, all of the first grade, both Orleans and Troop. And the agreement was that I would do a mindfulness. That's what I had done. I started to get trained in mindfulness for schools specifically.
Yes.
Right.
I remember that.
Yes. And thanks to Ramona, she got me a grant because the training was not, it was expensive. So we started that program, and I was following the curriculum for mindful schools. And that was intended to be like an 8-week program or 16 sessions, whether it was 8 weeks, twice a week, or 16 weeks, once a week. So, but True got more money. And so they're like, can you stay on longer? And I was like, okay, now I'm going to have to find lessons beyond. So I was like, well, I can teach these kids about their brain. And I started figuring out how to start to implement or bring in, the neuroscience piece, the polyvagal theory, in a very, very accessible. These were first graders, right?
Yeah.
And I also started to use Diana Alber's emotion spots, those little emotion spots in the books. So we kind of combine polyvagal theory in that. And so, but then, we ended that program right before COVID hit. And then we had to get through COVID.
Yeah. Everything went to a smashy halt.
We kept doing lessons, though. We did some Orleans lessons online on Zoom.
Yeah.
Which was so fun.
And then the clinic backed the fit, where everybody got the Fitbit things.
Yes.
And there was a challenge of, because everybody was pushed then to basically to virtual, when everybody was starting out, with all of that stuff. I remember that was a big thing. But it's worth noting at the same time, Kara, you were also one of the driving committee people for the TMOC youth mentoring, strategic planning, and creating that program, because we were meeting and creating that program. And then when COVID hit, it was crickets, everybody was just trying to survive, and we just about lost that program and so many others because of COVID. But you were on that original.
Me and Ramona used to have meetings with John Siebert.
Yes.
And
one of your jobs was to look at the system, the record system, or the wasn't it right? You had to evaluate a few different mentoring record keeping systems, and then decide which one. I think they still use the one that you
really.
I think one of them is, what was eventually implemented.
Yeah.
Was the ones that you were assigned.
I totally forgot.
Yeah.
I remember being a part of that big conflict and how exciting it was. And there was it was so cool to see. There were other areas we were seeing community come together.
Oh yeah.
All these
it was a big,
right?
awesome.
The Orange County Health Coalition, that was so cool. But that energy was so powerful at that time.
And it was during COVID.
Yeah. And right before and into COVID.
Yeah.
Because also, this is totally off the wall, but it plays into that synergy, sustaining Hoosier communities. The IU Center for Engagement, I was part of the team that put together the application. I was at that meeting where they talked about it. I was part of the team that helped to put together the application, fill out the application with Katarina. And
we were one of the original.
Yeah. I think,
because that was a new program for them, was it?
I don't know if we were the second or the third. I know Lawrence County had done it before.
Oh, okay.
yeah, there was so much.
No, I'm
much
thinking of
going on.
placemaking maybe. Or I
Okay.
can't, I don't know. Rural engagement became really involved
Yeah.
in Orange County.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story.
That's a
But
whole
let's
nother
all right, let's
story.
we gotta
Sorry,
get back to
yeah, I know.
get back
We
to
can
the
talk about
team
so
booties.
many things.
Because we're not even
I'm not here for self-promotion.
I know. We're really terrible at that.
Yes, we are. Try it.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, um, yeah, so at that point in 2019, 2020, when we were, just with first grade in 2 schools, we weren't called Team Peace. At Troop, we called it Resilient Rams. At Orleans, we called it Mindfulness because that's the curriculum we were teaching.
Yeah.
And then it just we got through COVID, and then we started getting asked by other grades, other teachers.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
come to my classroom too? We'd hear from second grade and we
I remember all
fourth
that.
grade. And so it was like kind of this at Paoli, especially because it wasn't an mandated, right? Wasn't required. And so they could choose. And so we started hearing from teachers like, would you consider coming to my classroom? So that's how like Paley grew organically like that. Orleans, they decided to go from just first grade to first through third. So everybody participated. And then a year or two later, we went from first grade to sixth at Orleans. And now we're K through 8 at Orleans. And Paley's grown to K through 5. And now we're in 7 schools.
7 schools. Right. I'll say,
Yeah.
I mean, you're in so many more schools
I
and
know.
classrooms. And it has been a pleasure. I mean, it's just been amazing to watch this expansion, to watch over the last several years, all again, right here in Orange County, and going from one classroom to multiple schools
Yeah.
with multiple grades. And then it's not even just the school kids. I mean, you're doing a lot of programming with teachers, with adults, I mean,
Yeah. I know.
I don't even know how to
know.
describe it all.
I don't either. I'm sometimes this well, first of all, I'll say, for those who don't know, like we became a 501c3, I think 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a long
Anyway,
time. Talk about that. When you
well,
transitioned to
well,
Team Peace.
So here's the thing. I named it let's go back to COVID.
Okay.
So when COVID happened, SICHC asked, I don't know if it's SICHC or the Thrive Coalition, but basically there was like a mental health kind of group that would meet regularly to talk about how do we support people, kids particularly, and their mental health during this time where everybody's, their
Yeah, I think we
change,
should just, with just our clinic, with people. I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, I was part of that. Like I was.
Yeah, and there was funds flowing in.
Yeah,
a lot more funds flowing in at that time.
So I got hired. So in Body at that time, like
I remember that
what I was under, got hired to do videos. So I would do online. I did all kind. I mean, I did.
I remember in the planning of that.
I don't know how many videos. A lot.
Yeah.
I just videoed from my house. I just very makeshift. I had some live online kids classes. I had pre-recorded classes, and it didn't reach a ton of people, but there were some very key like kids that watched regularly and whose parents would say, thank you so much. I remember there was this woman from Indianapolis who found me. And her daughter was about 10 at that time. And I remember her contacting me through Messenger or something after a couple months of this and saying, thank you so much, because our daughter would, anytime we wanted to talk about emotions or how she was feeling, she would just like clamp up and shut down. And now she has the language, and we've been drawing the spots, and we've been talking about, because I did a whole series on the emotion spots, um, and that was really like, I'm like, okay, if I reached one child and gave them permission, vocabulary, whatever they needed
Yeah.
to be able for their parents to be like, thank you, because, that it just meant so much to me. So anyway, I think most of those videos are still on my Vimeo channel. But anyway, that's when I needed to
They're going to be the classics.
Right. I I needed to give it the program a name, right?
Yeah.
So on my So Embody website, most of it was focused on adults and adult classes. So then I needed something that was like, this is our youth stuff. And that's when I decided to name it Teen Peace.
But I think didn't you go through we went through some form of, you asked a bunch of us.
Probably.
We did, because there was a
Probably.
lot of options,
Yes.
and we went through what felt like months, but probably wasn't, because
It probably was.
well, it
with
probably
me.
was months, but because I'm real like, we got, come on,
I know.
come on,
Brandy's always like, Brandy's my like, all right, Kara, if I'm an overthinker, I am a self-proclaimed overthinker. I know that about myself, and I need people to, yeah. So yeah, I'm sure it was
there
a
was
laborious process.
Yeah, there was 4 or 5, I think, options,
Uh-huh.
and I can't remember.
Anyway.
They were all variations, I think, and I can't remember. We landed on Teen Peace.
I'm glad that I asked the community. That does seem like something I do. I just don't remember.
You did.
Forgot.
Yes. Yeah, you did.
I forgot that I did.
Yes.
And now that you said, I'm like, oh yeah, I did do something like
Yeah.
that. I just don't remember like what the process actually was.
I don't know how. I don't either, but I was involved in that.
Yeah.
and
Well, I'm glad.
I don't know. I don't have any idea.
Because putting the pressure on myself to name something, I can see how that would have like.
Yeah, no. But so that was probably what, 4 years ago. But
Well, that was way earlier, but then we turned it into Teen Peace became a nonprofit just like
now
3 or 4 years ago.
because that's where I was where I'm on the board for Teen Peace.
You're like
And
my
sometimes
first call, Brandy.
but sometimes I don't even know what I don't even know what I do. I mean, I have no I mean, I can't even
Here's the
keep
thing.
up.
Let me tell you, I'm convinced that showing up is the biggest benefit.
Yeah.
In most communities, right?
Yeah. Just being there. Yeah. Showing up and doing something.
And it doesn't mean you have to do everything.
Yeah.
Because we know that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I've tried that.
I do think, I do think that you're very right when we all have things that we do very well, and we all have things that we struggle with. And the key is figuring out how to ebb and flow those things, because I think that, like everything, our strengths are in fact our weaknesses. The things that we do really, really well can be also the things that get us in trouble sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's important to know that, and then to put people around you who can help you in those spots.
Yeah.
And I do think at times I probably am more of that, okay, we got to make a decision. We have talked this thing to death.
Remember, I grew up Mennonite.
I know.
Census.
And I understand that, because I did not grow up Mennonite, but I did go there. There's a lot of talking. And
talking things through and making sure everybody's heard, which
I mean, which is good.
This is the interesting thing, and what I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off.
No,
but finding that balance, right? Because I feel like that this was one of the things I want kids, actually everybody, adults too, but that I want kids to have the experience of is that their voice is heard.
Yeah.
And that comes from seeing it modeled, but also knowing that there were times where I felt like my voice wasn't heard by parents or adults, and the whole thing of like, and I didn't really grow up with this sort of like parents with this mentality, but I experienced it still in other spaces, like children should be seen and not heard. And I feel like kids have so much to teach us, and they're human beings.
Yeah.
They're human beings. Even though they're younger than us and they're not as educated or don't have as much life experience, doesn't mean that they don't have something to say that's important, that they don't have something to offer us, something to teach us. Like, and I feel like in our program, yes, we teach things. We teach neuroscience and we teach about parts of the brain and how stress impacts you and your emotions. And we teach things, but we also work, like one of our biggest intentions is to give the space for kids, every kid's voice to be heard if they want,
Mhm.
you know.
Well,
So,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Anyway, so yeah.
And I think that that's true. I do think that what I struggle with, especially just being in this field, and of course, my background is mental health and substance treatment, and then so I have been have worked with a lot of children, and then I also have children, and it is figuring out how to have a voice heard, but that voice being heard does not necessarily mean that that voice will be activated, or whatever we're hearing may or may not be able to be utilized. And that's kind of the weird, like, how do you, because we don't, and I don't, getting our way is not really the right word. It's what's coming to mind, but that's the more gruff, not really what I'm trying to say. But so in a, kind of in an example of, yes, I think it is very important for children to be able to be comfortable to say, hey, this is what I think about this.
Mhm.
This is what I feel about this. This is what I think we need to do. And at the end of the day, too, though, there is times when, yes, but we cannot do that.
Right,
So then
exactly.
how do we how do we equip people just in general? Because it's not just a kid thing. Adults have a hard time with that. Like,
Yeah.
well, with figuring out at the end of the day what decision gets made,
Mhm.
right? Because a decision still has to get made.
Exactly.
So then when you have all of these kind of voices that are very valid, but there still has to be a direction.
Mhm.
So how do we communicate that? And then how do we teach that really young in kids,
Mhm.
so that then they are growing up with the skills to be able to communicate in a way that is better for their mental health, for their occupational health, for their academics, for whatever that is. And man, that's a hard
It
thing. But
is.
I think that the curriculum that you have developed over the years has is a helpful tool to support that kind of growth.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not like we go into a classroom and we say, "Okay, we're gonna spend the whole time," and everybody gets to, like, just say their thing, right?
Right.
There's structure,
Yeah.
there are boundaries, there's expectations.
Yeah.
So those are stated, those are modeled, those are repeated over and over because that's what we have to do for kids, right? Like, we want their voice to be heard. That doesn't mean they dictate what's gonna happen,
Right.
you know? I understand you feel that way, and
And you still have to go to bed right now. In
yes,
my case, it's
exactly,
you have
exactly.
we still
You
have to
still have
sleep.
bedtime,
You
or
still have to eat decent food. You cannot, have a candy bar at 9 o'clock. No. I mean,
yeah,
I
exactly.
understand this, but
Yeah,
and
and I'm not
yeah.
saying, like, um, it's not like, I don't know, it's it's not easy, and it's a
Yeah.
constant practice, and it's a constant figuring it out, but realizing that you're in a relationship with a child,
Yeah.
not like, um, you're yes, you're there to, like, hold a safe container, set boundaries, set guideline,
Mm.
all of that, right? Um, but not just to, like, dictate everything they do,
Mm.
and they're not there to dictate everything you do, it's like this,
Yeah.
it's a relationship, and it's a constant ongoing process to try to figure that out, right? And
Yeah.
here I am, I'm talking as not a parent, okay?
Oh, but
But
you
I do, yeah. and I have 2 teenage boys living with me now as foreign exchange students, and,
But a parent can
it
be more than a parent in
That is
our
true.
traditional sense. So I'm gonna
I just
I
don't
am
like
gonna
to
push you
acknowledge that.
back,
Okay.
push on that back a little bit because yes, okay, as our traditional viewpoint of parenting, but if we view this on how we raise youth,
Youth. Yeah. Yeah.
you're just as much a part of that as teachers are, as school community people are, as faith-based leaders are. I mean, when we're trying to work together to create a better foundation for kiddos, in whatever way that we can, because and I think this ties back into the ACE study, right? Because we know that there's a large percentage of our students or our kids here who have disproportionately dealt with toxic stress before the age of 18, and then that can in fact lead to trauma. It doesn't always, but it can. And we know that we're kind of double the national average here with what our research tells us, right? So we know that we can't necessarily change families like right now, right? But we can teach good skill. We can educate kids on how their brain operates and how to deal with those types of situations in a way that is more productive. That's what Team Peace does,
Yes.
in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we do. Yeah, and, I think, like, we start with a foundation, and it takes a while, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're in there once a week in most cases, once a week for just a half an hour. You can only get through so much. So over time, we're teaching, like we're trying to create a common vocabulary where we even have words to talk about,
Yeah.
you know, um, oh, I know that my amygdala is firing right now.
Yeah.
That is so helpful to know, or to know that a kid's amygdala is firing. I'm like, you're acting from your amygdala right now. Like
Right.
it takes there's something wrong with you, or there's something wrong with me out of it. And it's like we all have this biology, we all have
Right.
this physiology. So yeah, so we start with that as the foundation, and then we layer in like lessons or like specific instances, or you know um places or times where they may be able to recognize, like, oh yeah, I'm operating from
Yeah.
this part of my brain, and not
Yeah.
from the wise part of my brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, right? And
Right.
if they can recognize that, or a teacher can help them to, yeah, if a teacher knows it and can help them recognize it, then you go, oh, that's what's happening. There's a nervous system response happening here. We can actually do something about that.
Yeah.
We can start to, and I'm not saying it's always that easy, especially if a kid has completely flipped their lid, right? If they flip their lid,
Yeah.
then you got to let them, like, you can't logic with them because their
Right.
lights flip. That means that your prefrontal cortex is no longer accessible, right? Um, but over time, with that language, that vocabulary, and then with practicing tools every single week, we practice. And I know sometimes they're like, oh, I'm going to do that breathing practice again. But unless you practice it,
Right.
it's not going to be there when you need it.
Well, and that's what neuroscience tells us too.
Yes,
So we know
exactly.
that
We
that
know that
repetition is important with
And you gotta practice when you're not in a
state of
in a
fight or
heightened
flight.
state.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Or
gotta-
freeze or fawn or whatever we're calling it now.
Yeah, well, it is. It's
it's
fight, flight,
freeze and fawn.
fawn, and
There's a new one.
flop.
And okay.
So yeah. So do you want me to get into neuroscience?
Well, what I do want to go to is you've been in schools long enough now that you have repeat kids.
Yes.
Right. And you also have those relationships with the teachers. So one of the things I want to talk about is what do we think we're seeing? Right. But I also want to just kind of say, so my grandkids are in the Orleans school system, right? And our granddaughter, who is in kindergarten this year, was teaching her dad what we think was the Team Peace Pledge. And I think that that's what she was trying to teach him, right? And then every time when you and I go out to eat or go anywhere, there is at least one child, Miss Kara, Miss Kara. I mean, it's like a local celebrity around here following you around.
I get lots of hugs, which is awesome.
Yes, yes, everywhere
Yeah.
we go, Miss Kara.
When I went to I took my our exchange students to Polar Express, and, they were like I mean, there were so many kids there, and they all wanted to hug, and we're all and they're just like, "What is happening? Why do you hug everybody?" I'm like, "I don't know, like, I wish my job was just that I could hug people," and they're like, "Well, it seems like it is."
What are you talking about?
But yeah,
Yeah, it'd be
it's very
interesting to hear
so sweet.
hear from their perspective. Yeah, when as they're here, and
Yeah.
but anyway, outcomes. So, what do you think you're kind of seeing? Because how many teachers do you have now? Mm, Quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a, like, 90 close to 90 classrooms.
Gosh, that is
Yeah, I
it's
know, it's like
amazing.
yeah, um,
And in 5 years, 6 years ish.
yeah, I mean, we went last year we were in 4 schools, this year we're in 7, um, yeah, 6 this is our 7th year. So we've gone from, like, 1 teacher, 1 classroom of, like, 20, 25 kids to almost 2,000 kids, and I think it's, just a little under 90 classrooms. Um, so yeah, and so, we made that awesome video last year, and that was so great because we got to hear from kids, like,
Yeah.
what Team Peace has done for them, and I remember, um I mean, I have so many individual stories, um, but, like, it was so interesting when we were getting ready to make that video or just start the filming for it. A boy who was in 5th grade last year, so he's in 6th grade this year, was walking down the hall, and he had us from basically from 1st grade, I think, or anyway, and he said, just out of the blue, "Miss Kara, I just want you to know how much you helped me." He's like, I didn't know what to do with my emotions. And however he said it in his 5th grade way, but like
Yeah.
it was so profound. I was like, do you want to be in our video? And he's in there and he said, he's like one of the, he says, I had all these emotions. I couldn't control them. I didn't know what to do with them. And, Team Peace gave me the language and the space to start to
Yeah.
process. And so I feel like, when I was over at the school today for the basketball classic thing and seeing all these kids. And I'm looking at, they're kids from all sorts of schools. And I'm looking at the Paley kids of all different ages I see walking by. And I'm like, those kids, all of them have at least a basic understanding
Mm.
of their nervous system, or at least some parts
Yeah.
of their brain, right? If I asked them in the right way, they would be able to pull it up.
Yeah.
And that to me, I don't know how you can measure that. You don't know what the impact of that is going to be. But I think about if I learned in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, whenever in that elementary, just like that, I have this part of my brain called the amygdala. And when I'm afraid, it pops off, right? And then this part is my wise thinking, and I can tell when it's on and when it's off, right? Like how just growing up with that knowledge. So these, the kids, they don't even know what they know. You know what I mean? And I just think like that in and of itself is huge. Um, I think every human should understand the
Yeah.
basics of their nervous system and brain because I think it would help us to have so much more grace and compassion for one another because we could go, oh, not only like instead of like, what's wrong with them? why are they acting that way? You go, oh, their nervous system,
Yeah.
like they're acting from this part of their brain and nervous system.
Yeah.
And it doesn't excuse any behavior. I would, it doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it does help you to understand why somebody,
Right.
you know,
And I think that that's one of the things too that we haven't talked a lot about necessarily in this podcast, but you're not just teaching the why, you're teaching how to deal with it too.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so there is a twofold kind of thing going on with the curriculum that you have created. It's kind of a sandwich effect of, okay, here's what's happening, here's why this is important, this is why your body is reacting in this particular way, and here is what you do about it,
Exactly.
which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because we can't just leave people hanging. We can't just be like, okay, here's why this is, but so having the ability to say, okay, and here's how we calm our nervous system. And one of the things that I think that I remember, one of the things the most is so when, if you remember, and it was during COVID and it was the summer because we were outside and everybody had to be apart. Chris and I had attended a one of the classes, I don't know, and the bell. I love the bell.
Yes.
So just ringing this bell, grounding, basically just teaching different techniques, and all different techniques work for different people, and children are remarkable at being able to understand those techniques. I mean, it's okay to teach a child to be able to focus on this bell ringing, in order to ground. And I remember it was almost like I needed to hear the bell.
Yeah.
And then how long could we hear the bell? And then the more that we practiced, the longer we could hear the bell. I end up buying a bell, and I have a bell at the house, right? But just those small little things change people into this broader, bigger thing. And it's right here, right here in Orange County.
And it's really not, it's very simple.
But it is not always easy.
It's not easy.
Simple.
It is not easy.
But not always easy.
Yeah. And we come up with all sorts of creative ways to have kids explore, like breathing and what helps them. But really it's just breathing. And it's that simple.
Yeah.
Learning how to,
but getting oxygen to the brain for a reason. This is why you need to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that piece. There's getting oxygen to the brain. Even just standing up after sitting for 20, 30, 40 minutes is going to wake up your brain, because it's not like you lose oxygen out of your brain, but it decreases, like the access to oxygen decreases. And so just even standing up, this is why movement's so important. We include a lot of movement of all kinds of different kinds. Just to give that brain wake up. We almost always start with a brain wake up, just to make sure kids are like alert and ready. So the nervous system, to actually regulate the nervous system, depending on what state of the nervous system you're in, sometimes you need calming, but sometimes you need energizing.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so we give them lots of options for both, so that they know, like, if I'm feeling like sluggish and like tired and unfocused, and like that you can do a shakeout. You can do some cross-lateral movement, which also helps the two sides of the brain communicate. And, that is helpful for lots of things.
Yeah.
Vestibular system, reading, coordination, even emotional regulation, so everything we do has like a reason why. And then there are lots of more settling and grounding things that we do. And we always, tie it into, why is this important? And when can you use it? When could you have used it?
Right.
When could you try to use it in the future? But this is the thing, that we're not miracle workers.
Well, and nobody is.
Nobody is. And I wish I could tell a kid one time, this is what you need to do to calm yourself, or this is, and that they would remember to do it. But guess what? We need to model it. The adults need to model it. They need to remind the kids constantly. And
Right.
and then they will wire their brains.
And they need multiple ways to do that because not
Yes,
everything
exactly.
works well for everyone. Like everybody has something different that they like or that is, hits the spot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, we give kids. So this year, one of the things that our program has kind of added as an evolution is team leaders, because we also want, it's like, how do we have kids, start to think about, and even teachers like that were in their rooms, like, we don't have to be in the room for them to be practicing this.
right.
And we don't have to be the ones leading it all the time. So
Right.
let's create a team leader thing where each kid gets to lead, and they get to like do the whole first part. Some of those kids, we walk in the room, the team leader has, and we tell them who the team leader will be the next week. They have access to that. We'll walk into the room and the team leader will have them up in their circle. They'll have done the brain body wake up. They'll have done the team peace pledge. They'll have done the breathing practice, and they'll have done their first check-in question. And we walk in and they're ready to go. Like,
Again.
and it's so cool to see, like, just with practice and repetition, they start to, be able to realize I can do this anytime on my own. I don't need somebody else here. But it takes a while.
Right.
And it takes us reminding and modeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I think that, we could sit here and talk all night, but I think that we do need to talk about funding, right? Because here's the thing, this stuff sounds amazing, and anyone listening or watching would be like, wow, that's so cool. The reality is it takes a lot of financial stability that is really hard to come by in order to make this stuff work. Because the reality is most schools, they may have it marginally in their budget to be funded, but none of them really have it optimally funded. So the schools that you're actually in, it's not 100% funded that I'm aware of. And so there is always the need for funding.
Yes.
So talk about that. Let's tell some of the viewers and the listeners where they can go to find out more, and kind of some of the things we've done.
Yeah. So we are funded mostly by grants and private donations. And then the schools contribute what they can. Yeah. So we have a website. It's beteampeace.org. So we're called Team Peace, but our website is beteampeace.org. And we have a support link on there that you can either, if you want to use a credit card, you can go through the Zephy link, or send us a check, or just contact me and we'll figure it out. So yeah, so that's the best way. I would love for you to be a follower on our Facebook. We have fantastic staff member who does our Facebook, most of our social media. And I feel like a fun page to follow. So Team Peace on Facebook.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and always a pleasure. And I can't wait for where this program is going to go. And again, I think that it is important to understand what happens in small communities when you work together, when you have some creative ideas and you have the drive to make it work. This is definitely one of those programs.
Thank you.
Yay!
Wouldn't be here without lots of support from people like you. So
and so many others. So all right.
Others. Yes.
Thank you.
It's those little things that keep me finding my way back to the Orange County line.